If you're recording vocals at home, there are several things that you need to do in order to get nice, clean vocals. So today I made a handy list for us to go through to make sure that we can get reliable results every single time. So let's jump in. So one of the first things that we want to think about, whether we're standing up or we're sitting down, is the height of the mic that is in front of us. Now this is important because you want it to encourage the right posture when you're singing. So if it's too low, you can imagine that you kind of hunch down like this, or if it's too high, you're kind of reaching more like this. You want to have it straight on and pointed straight at the mouth of whoever is doing the singing. The next really important piece of gear we want to have is a pop filter. The first reason we really want to have this set up is so that we can avoid things like plosives. So if I said something like Peter Pan, you can hear that it adds artifacts and overloads the mic and does all kinds of things that we don't want. The key thing to remember here is that you want some distance between the pop filter and the mic, because if you have the pop filter really close to the mic, sort of like this, and then you come and you sing up close like this, it's not able to do its job properly because it can't actually break apart the plosives like it could if you had some distance. So now that we have a few inches between the pop filter and the mic, when we say the same thing, Peter Pan, Peter Pan, Peter Pan, it does a really nice job. There's a phenomenon called the proximity effect. When we get really close to the mic, it increases the bass response from whatever the input is. So if we keep our pop filter at this distance, we can not only do a good job of controlling the plosives, but we can also keep a really good and consistent distance away from the mic to make sure that that bass response is as consistent as we want it to be. A nice rule of thumb that you can think about using is the hang loose sign with your pinky and your thumb out like this, and that's kind of the distance that is a good starting point for maintaining between you and the mic. Now, another good consideration is to always be wearing headphones when you record your vocals. And the main reason for that is obviously that if the speakers are playing while you're recording, it's going to record back into the mic, which is not ideal. You also just get more detailed monitoring of your actual performance. The other consideration is that instead of using open back headphones like this, like you might use for mixing, make sure that you're using closed back headphones so that you're not actually getting a bunch of what you're feeding into your headphones into your mic. And speaking of feeding things into your mic, one little trick that you can use is to put on your headphones like this and then record while you're playing your backing track as well to check how much of the headphones actually bleed into the mic, because if you don't do that and you record a really nice take, but there's all this headphone bleed, you might ruin your take. So it's really good to check that beforehand just to make sure that, your headphone monitoring level is at a good level. One thing that I think people get hung up on a lot is how loud should the preamp be when you're recording vocals? How hot should you have your preamp? Back in the day of recording to tape, we had so much more to worry about in terms of signal to noise. We had to record a lot louder than we do these days. You can get away with much quieter level because we're not introducing as much noise at the same time. So a nice thing to shoot for is if you're in your DAW or if you have some software from your interface, just aim for about -10 to -15 decibels on the loudest part of the song. Sometimes people like to set their levels on the verse, and then when they get the hook, they kind of blow it out because they didn't set their levels correctly. So just make sure that you're setting it on the loudest part of your song, and you'll never have to worry about clipping. So even though digital recording gave us better signal to noise, these days we have to worry a little bit more about something really annoying called latency, which is where you hear what you're actually monitoring later than you're actually saying it instead of in real time. It's kind of like a little delay effect, right? Which makes it really hard to stay in time with whatever you're recording to. Now, the absolute best way to deal with this and to avoid it altogether is on your, if you had an interface like this, like a Focusrite 2i2, there's a little switch called direct monitor, and this is pretty common on a lot of interfaces, and it allows you to monitor what you are recording at the input stage instead of, through your software where some latency will be introduced. If you don't have an option for that, all is not lost. There's a few different things that you can do to reduce the latency if you do notice it. So let's say that we're in our session right here and we're ready to start recording vocals, and we want to be able to hear our own voice as we're recording it because that makes everything much, much easier. What we need to do is make sure that it's armed, which is usually indicated by this red record button on any track in any DAW basically, but in Ableton specifically, just make sure that it's on in or auto so that you can actually monitor the input in real time. But this, however, is where you might hear that type of latency that I was describing earlier. And one really important change inside of Ableton 12 is that you can make sure that this keep latency button is off, which means that as you record, it's going to maintain the exact timing of when you sang it and not actually the timing of when the latency was introduced. So just as an example here, if I created a new audio track and I armed both of them, one of them I had keep latency on and one of them I didn't, here's exactly what would happen to both of the tracks here. Okay, so if I record this very thing right here and we zoom right in, you can see that they're not exactly lined up. One's a little bit later than the other one. You can see this one starts right about there, which is not the exact timing. So just make sure that you have that keep latency off. Now, the other thing that you can do is you can go into your settings and you can make sure that under the audio category, you make sure that under latency, your buffer size is as small as possible. So you want as low of a number as you can possibly get. And that will reduce the overall latency inside of your session, but it will increase the load on the CPU. So just make sure that you have as simple as a session as you possibly can and have the lowest sample size that you can possibly get away with, and you'll reduce the overall latency. And lastly, even though we don't have complete control always over the environment that we record in, try to record in the quietest possible place that you can. A couple of kind of off the beat ideas are in your car or perhaps in a closet where, you know, those clothes act as sort of a natural dampening for any sound inside of that small enclosed space. You can even do things like grabbing a duvet cover and recording, like basically draping it over the top of you and your mic and recording that way, which some people have some amazing results with. So you can definitely get creative with that type of thing, but just try not to record like next to the highway or something where you're gonna get all that road noise in your recordings. And that is pretty much it. So if you do all those things, you're gonna save yourself a ton of headache and you're gonna come away with some really nice, clean recordings at home. If you guys have any questions or your own tips or tricks that you wanna add, please let me know down in a comment below. Happy vocal recording, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. Peace.